Hello, crafty friends. My name is Jessica, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I have a card for you using some of the Sweet Wishes release from the October 24 release from Simon Says Stamp. We're going to be doing a lot of die cutting and some watercoloring here with my Distress pencils. We're going to go ahead and remove the warm colors, and we're going to focus on the cool tones of these Distress pencils. Now, I only own sets 1 through 3. There are 6 sets total, but I have not added those additional ones to my craft room as of yet. Now, I did make an additional card using warm colors, and you're going to see that at the end, or maybe you saw it over on Instagram. But we're going to do the video here today just for those cool toned colors, but I did also make a warm colored version. So when I looked at this foiled cardstock panel, I had this vision of this ombre falling of color and it not really having it be structured and just a little bit more whimsical and playful. So what I'm doing is I am using a little palette here. This is a piece of cardstock that's been laminated and on the front it's a sketch design, and then on the back I just use this for my watercolor palette. But I'm wetting the pencil and then just going brush to the tip of the pencil and pulling up that color. And then using the palette to kind of mix the previous colors and to kind of get to that falling of color. Now, when you first start with this, it starts off really easy, but as we move through, you've got to continue to blend colors, and sometimes you are blending colors that might not go together, but it's just part of the funness of this blend and this little ombre going from color to color. Now, I am starting with that bright green, and then as we moved left of the palette, we added blue, and then as we're continuing down, we're going to add darker blues, darker greens, and then eventually move into purple. What I like about this is there's really no structure, as I mentioned before, so it's just up to the individual that is creating this panel on how you'd like the color to fall. Now, so this was a foil transfer cardstock. So what that means is it's been printed on a toner printer, and that toner ink is reactive to heat foil, which is different than your glimmer foils. So for this, and I did do that off camera, is I used some of the Art Deco heat foil and placed it pretty side up onto the top of this panel and ran it through my mink machine. You can also use a laminator. Anything that's going to be creating a little bit of pressure and a little bit of heat is going to get these two things to stick together. So toner ink is reactive to this heat foil. Now, I have not mastered the foiling of this, and so I did have a couple spots where the foil did not transfer. It's hard to see on video, but what I liked about that is it gave it a little bit more of like an antiqued feel. If you're wanting a full perfect foiling, I do not have the solution for that. I am still working through it. But what I do is I do my mink machine at level 3, and I use a piece of copy paper and run that through the panel and the foil together. So now that we've got our little tile, little ombre coloring here, or gradient. I've been saying ombre, but I really mean gradient. From their cool colors all the way from that yellow green to the purple. We're going to go ahead and set that to the side to dry. And now we're going to move into creating all of the die cuts. Now, it wouldn't be a Jessica Vasher Designs video without a little bit of pivoting. When I created the original card, I used a very different sentiment, and I thought this one would be a great sentiment to add just to create another type of card to have in my stash. So my first one was a happy birthday, so I thought just a because would be great. This was a really fun card that somebody might want to receive just because. But this die cut ends up being a little too big, and we'll see that moving on. But we're going to go ahead and stack it up. I do use 2 sheets of 110-pound cardstock with that foiled gold on top. And then we're going to go ahead and get into the ink blending. I cut out this floral from the Sweet Wishes release twice. Once out of the ink blending paper that I really enjoy, which is Simon Says Stamp 130-pound cardstock. And then the other was out of 110. Now, this card can always be moved or made into a single layered or less dimensioned card. So keep that in mind. I like a lot of dimension. If you're new here, that is something you're going to see a lot of. I like thick cards, but there are many people who don't. And these cards can all be trimmed down in their thickness to ensure that they meet the desired thickness of the individual who's viewing this. So keep that in mind. You do not have to add all of these extra layers in building of these florals. Now, I did decide to pull out my Rainbow Splash inks. I haven't used them in a while, and I was really looking for a blue purple to bring in to kind of match those distress purples there at the bottom. Now, I do have some warmer purples, but I really wanted to focus on the blue purple and bring that in. And this heather color is really hitting that. I looked at my swatch and I loved the color of this particular ink, so I went ahead and grabbed it and thought I'd also bring in the greens from Rainbow Splash so you can see how those worked on the greenery. I'm keeping the blending really light. We're going to use a lot of white space here for the florals, so I'm just highlighting where the petals are kind of falling or where they're kind of going to be the darkest and using the ink to create a little bit of dimension. So we're hitting the back of the panel probably a little bit more and then just slowly building as we go. And then just to keep it super easy, I went ahead and created the stamens also purple. I think that's what those are called. I should probably look that up to make sure I'm saying it correctly. So we're going to go ahead and do a quick clean. I'm really loving this Simon Says Stamp Craft Tacky Craft Grip Mat, I think is what it's called. It's really grippy right now. Loving how it's holding the die cuts so that we can do this ink blending. And I've been really happy with the grid lines on the back. So it's been a nice little addition to the craft room. You know, if you're not new here, you know my waffle flower grip mat is a workhorse. So it's nice to have two now in the craft room. In order to remove some of that white underlayer, I went ahead and just used the ink that was on my brush to color the back panel of this die cut just to make sure that it's not so stark white in case I couldn't get it lined up correctly. And sometimes when you have really dark die cuts, like that leaf in the bottom is really dark green, having the white underneath it, you can sometimes see that if you don't get it lined up. So I just use a little bit of extra ink to kind of cut back on that white. Now I didn't do it here because we have a lot of white and the parts that aren't white are mostly going to be covered up. So we're just going to go ahead and finish up adding all the additional layers here to all of the die cuts. And then we're going to go ahead and just let them dry and move on to cutting this panel down so that it had a little bit of a border and looked a little cleaner. By taking off that little bit of that border that was already in here, to me, it just makes it look a little bit finished. So again, not necessary. You didn't need to cut this panel down because we're essentially doing the same thing by having the card stock in the background. It's creating that white layer. It just looks a little bit more dimensional. Now, this is my favorite foam tape for mostly backgrounds. I was just showing you there. I just finished up my last roll, and so I went ahead and got the new one out. Altenew has these on sale. Typically, it has been for at least the last couple years on Black Friday for 30% off. So I always stock up then. This foam tape is thicker than another really popular on the market, which is your Big Mama foam tape from Simon Says Stamp. So again, you can definitely pare this card down by not using all this dimension, but I love it. I'm also an over adhesive. I would rather have a card survive the mail by having all the extra adhesive than not. But there are some people that don't feel like that amount of adhesive is needed, and that's fine. You do you. So now we're going to go ahead and build up the floral. And in order to make this a little bit more exciting, I like to add a shadow layer of the white glitter cardstock. Now, you're probably like, this is 3 layers just for a die cut. You're right, it is. You do not need to do this, but I really love the little bit of a bling that it brings. So as you can see here, I'm going to offset the glitter cardstock. It's a really subtle, but it's going to create a really beautiful effect when the floral is all layered. Now, I went ahead and was really easy to shadow that back layer just by pushing that glitter cardstock up. But for this little specific one here, we're going to go ahead and cut it in half, and then we're going to push it out to the sides of the petals. And in order to have them both kind of shadowed evenly on both sides, you cut it down the middle so that you can adjust and customize it that way. If that die cut was still together, you would only be shadowing either the left side of the die cut or the right side on both the outside and the inside, but I wanted the outside petals to be shadowed. So go ahead and cut that, and then you can glue it here to get that shadowed. Look. Now I did also do both of these tiny little layers, and I just pushed them to one side to ensure that there's just that little bit of glitz that's coming through. You could also use a colored cardstock or, ink blended these extra layers with a darker purple to create another fun little side of dimension. I like glitter, it just adds a little extra bling. We've got that really fun gold shiny background, that gold sentiment. So I just really enjoyed the way it looks with the glitter cardstock in the back. I've also made another card where I used the gold cardstock for the die cut and then added gold glitter cardstock behind it. And that created a really beautiful look as well. So experimenting with glitter cardstock is so fun. And this is one of the ways that I like to use it in my card making. So now we're just going to continue to glue these petals together, and I'm using the packaging to ensure that I'm gluing it in the correct order. Now, because I've made these pretty dimensional, it's a little hard to put a block on to get these petals all to glue together. So I'm just using as much glue as I can without it squishing over the edges and just giving it a lot of time to dry and using my finger to create that pressure. Now you can kind of see it there. It's a thick floral, but it also makes it feel very 3D and maybe a little bit more realistic when I use these additional layers to pop it up. And it creates a really beautiful depth with the amount of layers as well. So now that we have all of the elements created, I'm going to go and start fiddling with how I want this card to be laid out. And this is where we're going to experience a little bit of a pivot that just because sentiment, while beautiful, it just was a little too big for me. I really wanted the floral to show a little bit more, and I just felt like it was really overtaking it. So, quick jump. I went ahead and pivoted to this Hello die from Simon Says Stamp. I created this die the same way with two layers of the white cardstock with the gold on top and the vellum behind it. And this just allowed the floral to shine a little bit more and didn't overpower it with the size of how big the other sentiment was. So we're going to go ahead and glue it on. I've committed now. I've went ahead and glued that floral down as well and create a little bit pressure using one of my blocks from my stash. And then we're going to add some of these rainbow splash gems. I really love these gems. They come in 3 different versions of clear. We've got a true clear, a rainbow pearlescent clear, and then kind of a opaque, milky, cloudy kind of coloring. So I went ahead and added 3 at the top and 2 at the bottom, and that's the card for today. Thank you for joining with me. All of the supplies are linked below in the description box, so be sure to expand that. Please note that they are affiliate links, and what that means is if you click on a link and shop with me, I do receive a small commission at no cost to you. Now stay tuned as we show you the side-by-side of the warm and the cool cards, and I just like to let you know to have a beautiful day.